Good morning, everyone. Okay, so in this live, I'm going to talk about intuition and spiritual discernment. And I'm going to explain why I'm going to talk about this morning. So, for a variety of reasons, I've seen a lot of healers and coaches and therapists and people with spiritual businesses really struggling with discernment over certain things over the last few years. And spiritual discernment particularly is something that I have talked a lot about. And I think we're at a precipice in society and in the world where it's really important that we get more discernment in our lives and the things that are happening round about us. And a lot of people are starting to wake up to that as they've saw a lot of things happen on a worldwide scale over the last few years. And they've realised that sometimes they've just gone by what they're told and are told what to think and whatever. And just to think sometimes because we get exhausted, we get overwhelmed, we get busy, we get stressed and distracted, that we don't always apply discernment to things. Sometimes it's just easy, or sometimes we are, as I said, so distracted, stressed or busy that we miss the cues. But I believe when you are running a spiritual business, and if you want it to be truly soul-aligned, and you want to be empowered, and you want to be, living your life from purpose, right? It's so important to get that guidance on a daily, on a weekly, monthly, you're constantly asking for guidance and tuning in to guidance. Now, it's quite timely that obviously when I had decided to do this webinar, I'd forgot that Ken was going to be doing a lot about his channeling, and a lot of the things that we talked about in that is also relevant to this session. And even though the session, I'm going to make it more about discernment, I want to cover the basics of intuition. And I think it's worth listening to some of Ken's views. We all can have slightly different views, but it's worth listening to Ken's views. So I'm going to break it down just in a very simple term and how a lot of people look at intuition, right? And to get just back to the basics, right? And if we look at intuition as just a way of getting information, right? And it's often information that's not rational or logical, right? It's you get information, and a lot of people will say it's your sixth sense, right? And it's a way of channeling and getting spiritual information that maybe defies logic, defies what your rational mind will say. And it can come through in all sorts of ways, and it can be channeled in all sorts of ways. And I do believe that, a lot of people feel things in their instincts and internally when they're getting their intuition. But obviously, if people have strong guides or they have a strong higher self connection or whatever, they feel that information very strongly, and they get information in different ways. Now, I don't have time in this session to go into all, because this is just a short session, right? I mean, we have all different clear gifts. So some people are clairaudient in relation and how the information they get in a spiritual or psychic way. Some people are clairvoyant, okay? Some people are clairaugustans, and they can actually taste things, right? We all have, there's so many different ways that we can process that information. I'm very clairsentient. I'm also claircognizant. I just know things. And one of the reasons why I've said intuition is because it's a loose term, and it's sometimes easy for people when they're just getting the basics, because I know that this group is full of different healers at different levels, right? So some people are healers and coaches and they're very new, and maybe only in the industry about 5 years. Some people are in 10, 20, 30 years. And I also have some of my students from my stress coach training and are in this group who, want to learn more about these things. So one of the things that I would say is that when you have confidence in your intuition and in confidence in your channel, right, when you get that information, it helps you make better decisions, and it helps you be more discerning of lots of things. And I'll give you some examples why it can be really important in a spiritual business. For many, many years, I've had so many therapists, coaches, and healers come to me for help with their business. And many have spent many thousands of pounds with other people, whether that marketing mentors, coaches, business advisors. And often they came to me with all this money they had invested in, and often they had no money left or very little left. And they'd invested in things that were not aligned with their type of business, or were just ego-based. They were very ego-based, just about making money, but it was not, again, aligned, or they weren't learning what they really needed for their business, or they were learning things that were not appropriate to how they wanted to run their business. Or they also had maybe invested in things that, because they didn't understand the subject or the topic, they thought the person maybe had more skills or whatever. And it can be very annoying when you are starting out in a business, because any business needs a good investment. It's an investment, not just time or energy, but it's an investment of money. And when you're a healer or therapist or coach, you often come in and you've invested a lot of money and often many years in your training to get your training up to a certain level. But one of the biggest things that I see is a lot of people then have forgot about the other things that they have to do to help their business grow. And this is where they get stuck, and they can make unwise decisions because they're in a state of lack, their state of fear, and often the ego is running the show. Intuition, and is what some of the things watching Ken's video talked about. The more that we have a connection, a strong spiritual connection to our inner guidance, and the more that we have a strong connection to what's coming through for us from a high vibration, we make higher and much stronger decisions in our business. We make more crystal clear decisions. Now, I'm very lucky. From a very young age, I had very strong intuition. I was highly empathic, probably off the scale empathic, and even my sensitivity. Now, I have to be honest, in some ways that could be disabling because I didn't know how to harness it. I didn't know how to use it. On one hand, I had a father who actually encouraged us to use it, and he always says, so a layman's term would say, use your gut, use your intuition. So that's how my dad would describe it. And that is what I'm using the term I did. Now, my dad was someone who left school at 15 and was classed as the dunce of the class. He had dyslexia, but obviously in those days, people didn't get diagnosed with those things. He went and he couldn't get a job, and he ended up having to be a miner for a couple of years. Young guy, horrible job. And eventually he would then go on to later on, when we were all, well, some of us were young. I'm a family of the oldest of 9 kids. Very young, my father started his own business, and it became a manufacturing business, and it became the most prominent, I suppose, highly reputable manufacturing in his field in the UK. Now, my dad does other things now, but does something else now. But the reality was that he learned the hard way. He had good intuition, but he came across a very difficult situation sometimes in business. And he learned that it was his intuition, to trust his intuition, no matter what logic and what rationale came in front. And he taught us that that we should go in our intuition in, you know, lots of areas. Now, one area probably didn't really teach, but I had to learn, was to do with the medical field and the health field, and even the healing and holistic field, and I'll explain why. So because from a young age I had very rare medical challenges, and then had a lot of just been unfortunate, had a lot of things happen, which include mercury poison. It would appear I had tick bites at 14, and I had lots of different things that happened. So I arrived at 19 with very complex medical conditions already, also a condition I had as a baby, which seems pre-congenital. And like many people who are chronically and very seriously ill, I didn't have a lot of money. In fact, I went from being a student who was paying our own course and was not paying like stamps or anything, to a situation where I didn't even get proper sickness benefit. It was mostly like unemployment benefit. So you can imagine I was living off a very low income, and I couldn't function. I was actually at times 16, 18 hours and even 20 hours in bed, and I literally couldn't get out of bed, and I had all sorts of strange symptoms. I was diagnosed with severe ME. I had lots of other really weird and wonderful things. And I had to learn spiritual discernment and discernment very quickly. So I'm going to explain the difference between discernment and spiritual discernment. So if we look at discernment, discernment is often the act of good judgment, right? And being able to make good judgment about things, right? Spiritual discernment is often making a discernment. Is this the truth? Is this coming from a higher place? Is this coming from a pure intent? Right? Or is it coming through the ego? Or is it coming from manipulation or not quite honesty? One of the interesting things that I've saw over the last few years, particularly everything that's going on worldwide, right, is that even sometimes the most psychic and intuitive people not using discernment or spiritual discernment, and made decisions from fear or low vibration, right? And the reality was is they're not using, combining their intuition and their sixth sense because they allowed themselves to be in fear. They allowed themselves to be in stress, and also to be conditioned to, sometimes it's so I work with archetypes, and I do kind of inner child work as part of my programs to empower, you know, healers and therapists and things, and that's part of the work that I do as well. And one of the things that can happen is that we all have different archetypal traits that are stronger than others, right? And we all have different archetypal vulnerabilities and strengths, right? And I'm someone that studied so many different things: counselling, psychotherapy, psychology. I've done many holistic therapies, physical. I spent years doing different types of spiritual courses, right? And again, one of the things that I saw was lack of spiritual discernment, the ability, so people just taking what everybody told them and taking on that as truth, fact, and not having the discernment to see what really felt right and feel into it. And I think it's very, very important, right? A lot of my friends have always said, and even spiritual friends laugh because sometimes they have a conversation with something, and it's like this really strong surge comes through me, and I'll say, that's not right. I just don't feel that. Or I get information about something or someone, or I get, it's like so it's a channel, it's channeled information, but I get it through, right, very strongly in certain things. And I'm lucky that I've got that to a high degree. It tends to happen to me when I don't expect it to, particularly strong information. But I learned out of lots of my health challenges going through that I've been told a lot of things that didn't feel right and was definitely not right. I had lots and lots of medical neglect, medical damage, and also wanting me to take things that I knew would be very serious for me. I also had that in the holistic and spiritual field, where people wanted to do things that I knew instinctively was definitely not right. And their ego would be trying to push me into doing something that was not right for me. And I'll tell you some other funny things. So I'd be on help somebody with a business, and then they would say, no, I have to heal you, right? But my intuition would tell me when they were coming from the ego, and when it was their ego overriding, okay, and it was just the rescue and other traits. So we're all complex, and none of us have got it perfect. And I certainly don't get it right, all the time. But I think if you really want to be, if you really are, it's at a soul level, you want to live your purpose, and you truly want to create a soul-aligned business rather than an ego-aligned business. It's important that you do develop your intuition. It's important that you listen into your inner voice, and you spend more time in that than in the outside world. And when you go to invest in whatever, yes, I'm going to be honest, I teach strategy and people working what's aligned with them. I do teach strategy because I think strategy and psychology and all that has its place, because most people function at 3D. And even though a lot of us are moving into 5D, there is that aspect. But of course, you have to go with your intuition. I ask for guidance every single day, and I ask it throughout the day, so that it can move me if it's my ego is overriding in a negative way, okay? And I ask to be spiritually guided. Now, I'm someone that, so I know everyone has different perspectives of what we think is God and guides and whatever. But I ask always for the highest guidance in relation to my work, okay? And sometimes I end up doing the strangest things, but I know I'm being guided to do that, right? Because I look at myself as being a channel for God, a channel for the light, right? And in many ways, it's not about my ego, right? It's about how I can best do what I'm here to do and help other people. Part of that sometimes is going the road less traveled, right? And it's partly that can involve you, when other people are following certain people, or when other people believe a certain thing or doing a certain thing, it can mean that your discernment is telling you, no, I'm not doing this. And that can be very hard, because it means that you have to have a certain amount of courage. And I know a lot of you will be highly empathic, and the challenge that an empath has, particularly, but women particularly, who are highly empathic and who are the overgivers. I've been an overgiver most of my life, and part of my archetype is, the top one is the nurturer, the caregiver. So I've got to watch, because my overgiving in one hand is part of my nature, but obviously I have to be careful of the imbalance, because sometimes that attracts, people that just want everything for free and don't value and don't exchange and don't give back. But I know that a lot of people that I attract are very similar, right? And when you're highly empathic and overgiving, what can happen is you fall into the rescue mode, and you don't always use your discernment when you should be always giving, or when you should be allowing and stepping back, because you can create codependency in your audience and your clients, where they don't take self-responsibility and they want to be in victim mode. Also, it's really important if you're a bit of a people pleaser, or you're maybe a bit introverted, you don't like rocking the boat, and you're not. I mean, I have some clients sometimes who get a bit of the rebel and the maverick. It's not the archetypes that I most work with, but we have the opposite side of that, where the people who don't like to rock the boat and are more introverted, or more like to take the time to process information. I am a fast processor, but there is things that I go and take as an empath. I take my time to make decisions with certain things, right? There's some things I make very fast. There are other decisions I take my time. But when you're highly empathic, And if you've not got really, really strong boundaries, it's very easy to be controlled and manipulated and start to question yourself by other people's stuff, right? And it's very easy to be overwhelmed by other people's energy, because even when you are buying other things for your business or you're investing in other things, it can be even things like, I've hired VAs who've tried to control me, right? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And a lot of them not even know what they're doing, right? And thankfully I've got Caroline. Caroline's got a lovely, gentle energy. But I've had many VAs who've been very overpowering, and, you know, and it didn't work. And sometimes we can attract people in our life that are very controlling or overpowering or very opinionated. And even in the spiritual community, we can have, I mean, I can be very opinionated by others, but it's so important for people to take what is right for them and feel into what's right for them. And there can be a fine line by that and your shadow. You know, someone can trigger you, and being triggered, it can be very different than actually something that's not right. Okay, so when we're triggered, it's like a quick, fast emotional reaction. That is you being triggered, right? And that's aspects of the shadow that needs to be healed. But when your guidance, and for me, I'll give you, I mean, I know it can come through very different for everybody, but for me, there are some things I just feel off. And even very famous spiritual teachers, there's sometimes I felt a real offness. And one of the things that we knew about the golden age and the awakening and everything that's coming through, that there would be a very unveiling. A lot of things would have to come out to the open, and people would start to see people for really who they are. And, you know, maybe where aspects in spirituality, people were doing just things for money, or they were maybe not teaching things from a pure perspective. Again, it was just about commercialization. And we're in a situation at the moment that never has there been as much of the spiritual work being looked as an industry just to make money, right? And one of the hardest things that I find, and I find quite upsetting, to be honest, because I'm caring and I'm compassionate, is clients who come on who have often maybe early retirement, or, you know, they've left other jobs and they've spent huge amounts of money with maybe a website designer, graphic designers, marketing things, and lots of business coaching, and it's still not moved them forward. But often they've made decisions from the fear or their ego. They've not been tapping in their intuition and their spiritual discernment, and they've not, sometimes idolize two people. They put people up on a pedestal just because someone's maybe famous, someone's got a book written, or all sorts of things. And I'll give you an example. I've had sessions with two different Hay House book readers, and they were the most awful sessions that I've ever had with people. They didn't know, the two did not know what to do with me, and they put me in a dangerous situation. I have rare form, well, I'm doing lots better now, but I had rare kind of more like seizure type things, right? And I wasn't using discernment as well, because right away there were certain red flags come up, right? And I did let them put them up on a pedestal. We have to get out of that. We have to start using discernment in every single thing. And we have to be also very discerning about what we do, right? And it's okay. We're all human, and we're all here on a journey. But when I hear this so much, when people come to me very frustrated and they're in a situation where they've invested in so many things, and things that are, and also businesses that don't understand what you offer. I know it can be frustrating, because sometimes when I'm trying to hire in certain things, I ask them lots of questions now, and I used to feel bad if, you know, maybe I should just give them the job, maybe this, maybe that. And now I'm learning to be even more stronger in my discernment. No, they're not the right person, or this may not be, for whatever reason. So intuition is so important in our business. Intuition is vital, and we use it every single day. And intuition should be something in your inner guidance and your channeling and all that. And even some of the things that Ken was talking about the other day, it's so vital in everything from the choices you make in a health, what you eat, what you consume, what you let be put into your body, from the choices that you make, and we allow and we continue, because I think as society we became very complacent about what happens outside in the world, and we also become very easily led by propaganda, by media. We believe everything we're told or see. We don't question things. We do not feel into it. We do not ask, and think something. So I think in many ways we've been very programmed, and we've got lazy in using our intuition. Now, of course, I believe that we all come in with these senses, and some are nurtured, some are maybe just have not been allowed to come out. Many empaths and sensitives do have, their sixth sense and all sorts of gifts, spiritual gifts, right, that get squashed from an early age because of trauma, because of psychic, would you call it, by other people's stuff, right? By maybe the fear of what they're seeing and other people don't understand, by cultural reasons, by all sorts of reasons, right? They can actually have challenges because of trauma and squash that intuition down. And they can find it difficult to know when it's the mind and what's the intuition. That's one of the reasons why I encourage deep meditation, right? And taking the time to be stillness. Also, one of the things that I notice is it depends on people's level of consciousness. So you can meet people who are really highly developed psychically and channelers, but they don't have high levels of consciousness, so they're not always aware of their surroundings, and they don't have. So how do we develop the levels of consciousness? Well, one of the things I believe is meditation and, and doing the inner work. Okay, so I know there was someone on, I think the popped off. I think maybe I was talking too much. But what I want to do is see if anyone has questions. I know I do prioritize in the Zoom. It's easy for me. Inquiry is so important. It is, Janine. And I think also one of the things that's so important is always to check in. What if it's guiding and intuition? How high is the vibration? How high is your vibration when you are getting into these, getting in and asking for guidance? I personally find my strongest guidance doesn't just come when I'm asking for it. It comes, so I ask in my morning, I start my day. I start my day by always deep meditation and just asking that I be guided throughout the day, right? And I do a lot of inner work, and I do go to, and I go to many teachers to learn, and I get, work on myself, because I also believe that we all have our blind spots, and I just don't believe that you can just evolve from a book or just from one teacher. I think that's very, very limited. And one of the things that I learned along the way, that everybody, has their idea about things, and they can be quite adamant how something is, or they believe that that's the truth. And even things that maybe I thought 10, 20, 30 years ago, I maybe have a completely different opinion now, just on my level of consciousness or awareness and how I look at things. And I think that's part of our evolvement. But I think I speak to so many people, and I've been really, really surprised about this over the last few years, people, who are healers and coaches, who still do not challenge even the propaganda that's out there. They seem to believe anything. They don't seem to use their intuition on a daily basis. They're only using it for maybe certain things, or just their work, or they're just using it with clients, or they're just using it for something else. And I think it's really, really important that to keep moving forward, and to not invest in the wrong things, and to give ourselves more power is to use our intuition and our discernment and our spiritual discernment in all the choices. So I'm going to ask you some basic things that you might think are not related to your business, but I do think they are. So I want to ask you how much you're discerning about what you eat and how healthy you eat. right? The choices that you consume and what you put into your body. Because I do believe that these things can make a huge difference into your vibration, your mental health, your emotional health, and even your spiritual health. Because if you have a clean diet and really, you eat a lot of healthy food, right, and high vibrational food, is going to be easier for you. It's like you're a clear channel, right? You're a clearer channel when you don't have toxins and whatever, right? And when it gives you more energy and when you're clearer. So that's one thing. Obviously, also, obviously our thought processes, but what I do believe is that some people can get so caught up in changing the mental mind, and they're so focused on mental tools that they're not using their spiritual tools and they're not using their inner tools. So again, if he's not watched, it's worth watching Ken's session from the other day. One of the reasons that I've added something to the Lightworkers Toolkit, right? And in the Lightworkers Toolkit, I added the Lightworkers Toolkit to the premium, the platinum level of the Spiritual Marketing Club membership. And the reason I did that was I've been attracting a lot of coaches, and I've attracted a lot of healers who may have only been taught by a few people or a few books or whatever, and they maybe don't see a wider perspective. And at the moment, it's never been as important that we do raise our vibration, that we get the highest information that we can to move forward, and that we do not fall for propaganda, and that we do not just automatically trust things of a version of what someone else is presenting us. We have to go inward, right? And we have to get a clearer channel, right? And when you do that, it becomes more empowering. You move out of that victimhood and you become more empowered, and you start taking self-responsibility for a lot of the choices that you make in your life and a lot of situations you're in your life, right? So that's what it can really help. It can also help you make decisions when you are saying, right, is this a good use of my time, or is this not a good use of my time? Could this be, now sometimes we don't know what it is, it's off about something. And I'll give you some other things. So I've had some V's, lovely V's, and who are spiritual, but they just wanted to share, like I had a meditation page and they just wanted to share any meditation they found on YouTube, but they didn't think about actually tapping in and checking in to see if that energy was high vibration. Now, no matter what kind of channel is, one of the things that I would say is really important in intuition is expanding your heart, right? Is opening your heart and doing heart work, right? When you open your heart, when you expand your heart, it's easier for you to attract the higher vibration, right? And it's easier to feel into vibration. Now, and I've been in sessions, for example, I've done lots of Akashic training and different types of channel. I've done different soul work. I've also had different types of soul readings and things for people. And sometimes I found myself them projecting what they believe about me rather than their spiritual guidance. I also had a session not that long ago, and I'll explain, which was quite interesting. This woman was lovely, and she gave me a beautiful session about in relation to part of my, it wasn't to do with my personal, I can't remember, it came out that I needed to be more, I was not to be fearful about speaking my truth, that it was so important for me, even though I was highly empathic and sensitive and maybe not ever want to hurt people, that I had to be more truthful with people, because, and that was part of my purpose. And I had to, and it really hit home at the time, because I knew that this was something coming through, but my mind was over talking my need to not hurt people. And I have cleared a lot of that, but my worry that I was going to push people over the edge. So I had this belief that I was going to push people over by being more truthful about certain things, right? And sometimes we need I don't think we need, sometimes yes, of course, it can be helpful for somebody to reaffirm something and gives a bit of clarity. And it did. It was extremely powerful, that part of what she'd done, because I knew it, but it was like someone else was giving me that information. But then what happened, she'd done another part from a business. And in a way, it was a bit rushed, and it was very clear that some of it was coming from her head rather than what it was coming from her soul. And I remember thinking, my goodness, doesn't feel right. This feels a lot, this is off. Some of it was okay, but a lot of it felt so off. And then she can more or less say, but this is what your soul is telling you to do. Now, I do not believe you ever should take someone else telling you what your soul should have to do. Of course, you can get some guidance and people give you, but sometimes people want to project on, or they are getting information, whatever. I then got a strong sense that this wasn't, it was just something she'd added in, and it was not coming in from me for the right place. And I stepped back, and to be honest, I kept thinking, is it my ego that's conflicting with her opinion that I do not want? And I stepped back and allowed guidance to come through. And I got so much guidance that no, I was not to do what she told me to do, right? That it was, and she was very young into doing this sort of work. And then she asked me some feedback, and I was honest, and she was okay, and she agreed with some things. There were some things that we maybe didn't agree, because she still felt that she knew what my soul wanted. But I think we have to take back our power and remember that you at a soul level, ultimately, particularly if you, I mean, I had 30 years experience on her, right? And I'm not, this is not, not saying, but what I had to sit and say, wait a wee minute, am I taking advice from somebody who maybe doesn't have the experience, or it's what they're projecting on? So it's so important that we do take our power back, right? And of course, we can also be in situations where we're helping someone and they have blocks and they have resistance and they don't want to see it, and they're triggered, and it's a fine line. But the reality is, at the moment, I'm getting a lot of people who feel overwhelmed by advice that doesn't feel right for their business, that feels so. And there is a difference between being in resistance with something that you maybe have to do in your business, you don't like doing, and you want to be, and it's the inner child coming out. It's that little child coming out going, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to school today. I don't want to do my homework, that kind of thing, right? And then there's a difference between that when something is off and is not aligned in your business. There's a fine difference, right? And you're the only one that often can do that. I always feel when something, so when it's powerful information that I know something's not right, and if I'm getting something that's really like something's going on that's nefarious, I get a sharp, it's like a thing, it comes right through my body. And it happened at the beginning of the pandemic. That's what I'm going to say. Certain things happen, and I get this feeling right through that things were really off, and there was a darkness to it, right? There was a nil intent to it. When I get something that's really good, I feel around me a warmth and energy, and there's things, and there can be different guides, but I'm trying to simplify it for what is, right? There's real high warmth and vibration, right? When I'm on with a client and I can feel they're in a low vibration, they're often carrying like a real lower dense energy around them, right? And their body language can be down, they can be hiding, they can be sitting in the dark, they can be whatever, right? Or they're in their mind, they're constantly, they let their mind control them, right? I always connect with my heart and my soul, and then I do that through my day, right? Now, I do have some tools in the Lightworkers Toolkit, and the Lightworkers Toolkit was added because it had lots of intuitive development, things that I've learned over many years on empath stuff, all sorts of stuff. And it was a bonus that if people wanted to do the what do you call it, the Platinum Spiritual Market Membership, they could access all that to make sure that they're energetically strong, that they are more resilient, they're empowered, they're boundaried, to move forward, right? So that's there, okay? But one of the things that I believe is really, really important at the moment is that I have clients and I have people on my mailing list from all around the world, and they're all facing different challenges in each country, okay? And inflation's changing, recession's changing, and they're feeling things different, different things are happening in their business. And some businesses naturally have a quicker progression and have attraction than others. Some people, the type of things that they're offering, just for a variety of reasons, are easier to attract clients, right? That's just the way. Also, the more that you are in the flow, of course, certain things will be more attractable. And I meet people who actually get very simple business models. They also have very unique skills that actually they don't see it, maybe just because they're in victimhood, but they actually have aspects in their business that is really easy to run and to make money from. Other people have got gifts where, for a variety of reasons, the nurturing process sometimes has to be a lot longer, because it's about trying to get their clients to understand and their audience to understand why their program or why their product or service will help them, right? So there's some things, it's like business and marketing. Many healers and coaches start out and I actually don't think that they really need that much business and market advice. They just think they're going to show up and everybody's going to come to them. So it often takes them a wee while to learn that, and then they're very cautious. And it's funny, they can spend tens of thousands of pounds on their coaching courses and whatever, but when it comes to their business and marketing, it depends. And I think there's a culture thing as well. There's a mindset thing. It can depend on what they actually invest, and they forget or they don't see that that's an important part of the jigsaw for to make their business function, right? So we all come from different perspectives. But the reality is we all have intuition. We all have guides. We all have a higher self or higher purpose, right? And if you are in fear, if you're coming from a negative mindset, right? If you are, in a low vibration, you're often going to not get that. The guidance it's not easy to come through. The more that you practice disciplines that help you switch off and be still, you bring that stillness into your day, and it's easier then to decipher what is coming through. So I want you to think about situations in your life because everybody's had experiences like this. You just knew something, or you had a funny feeling something was going to happen. So I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks I had a foreboding. And I think that as part of the collective, that's what I get. I get often foreboding. I get premonitions. I get things when things are going to happen. And I got a foreboding about certain things. And I actually couldn't decipher, I kept saying, is this family? It is collective. I felt it was a bit of both. And it turns out I do feel a lot of things happened in my family the last couple of weeks. And a lot of other things around about me. And I was getting prepared for that, right? But I also was getting prepared for what's been going on in society at the moment. So because I'm working with people that are dealing with certain challenges, and they're working with clients that are dealing with extreme challenges. So it prepares you when you have intuition. It prepares you, it guides you, it helps you take that next step. It tells you what not to do. And sometimes you may not know why you've not to do something, or why you should do something, right? It's not about all knowing, it's about trusting your intuition. And we live in a society where we've got too used to giving our power over to other people. If we just look at even the political arena and the government arena, we have gave over power to other people to make decisions they're making decisions that they have no right making about the human nature and human freedom and so many things. But we've got very complacent because we have gave our power away on so many levels, and we don't take self-responsibility. And I believe that when we start becoming more using our intuition, using our inner channel, and be more discerning, we become naturally more empowered, and we become more independent and of course we're all together in this and we're helping each other, but you do not become dependent on other people. You do not become dependent on a teacher. You do not become a spiritual teacher, a coach, a healer, because some people become very dependent on someone else. It is so important that you get back to you. Okay, so I'm just going to see if there's any questions. Generational beliefs can cause, of course. And it's not just misunderstandings, I think, Janine. I think generational beliefs can become so embedded into us on the ancestral line, right, that it's hard for us, even though we intuitively know it's not right, we can find it hard to shift. And if we are in an environment where most of your family is carrying that generational belief and you're highly empathic, you can be really, it can be like a controlling energy on that frequency that is keeping you trapped. And you need to, and the more, if you are giving your power over to them constantly, you're not able to break through that. So, I mean, there is things you can do, but I think that's what can happen to see. Inquiry is so important. I've been amending my diet of late by reducing the portion I eat of meals and having more nuts and seeds. Body's rejection sugary foods. I think sugary foods are really a no-no for spiritual people. And I think it's about juicing and smoothies, you know, getting at least 10 portions of fruit and veg a day is really, really important. Getting all different variations. And reducing the amount of meat. Yeah, meat can be I think coffee as well can be a big thing. Meat and all that very slow digestion, very low vibration meat. And you think about coffees and things, stimulants. Intuition has been telling me to slow down and simplify. Well, that's what you do, Janine. Okay. So I'm just checking there's nobody else in this has come on. Right, we see. I think it was just me. There was someone that popped in and she went away. I do apologise, but I wanted to clarify what I was meaning and why I did this session, because, you know, as for some people in the group and some of my clients, okay, to see. Yeah. I think this is the thing, Janine, who we spend most time around can influence us. And even though we know that what they're saying is not good for us and whatever, it can be it can wear you down. It can wear you down, other people's projections. I know that I found that very hard. And I also found it hard when I was working with healers and therapists, where sometimes it was, so I think and I'll share this story just before I go. In fact, this might click off, but I'm just going to show this one piece of information I think is really, really important. I had a premonition, not a premonition, so it wasn't a premonition. I got a piece of information quite a few years back where I was seeing all of these people's projections onto me, right? And it was all people's ideas and beliefs about certain things about my health. And what I was shown was most of them was none of it's true. It was their perception. And many of them were adamant, particularly healers or therapists, of what was going on in situations where it was very clear later on they were so off the ball, but they were so adamant about their modality. They were so adamant about what they can see. And what we've also got to remember is how people see things is only linked to their beliefs and where they're getting that information, and how it's not just sometimes about what is presented to them, it's how they actually take that information and process it to you. So they could have a really low conscious and maybe getting information, but if they have a certain level of consciousness, they don't know how to process that information through you, and it may come through the way that they say it or the way that they explain it. It's not coming through in the right way. And I realized that none of those opinions or whatever mattered. Some of it was controlling and very disempowering, right? And that I had to go back to my inner voice. And my inner voice has literally saved my life when it came to medical. Now, I had sepsis, and on a conscious level, the doctors and all that didn't think I did have sepsis, but I knew something was seriously wrong, right? I also had so many situations where people were going to do things that were so serious for me. And one of the things was I had lots of problems, allergies and reactions, serious reactions to anesthetics, to all sorts of things. And it was really hard because as someone, I was very soft, empathic, and I was a people pleaser. I did not want to rock the boat, but I had to learn to become more empowered and to trust my inner voice. I also have a friend who saved his own life in hospital, where he was in a life and death situation, and he got guidance to do something totally different that the medical field were doing to him. And this is so important. We give our power over to many things, medically, spiritually, the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. And never more than ever, it is so important that we go into our intuition and ask for truth and guidance. And spiritual discernment is all about truth, wisdom, and guidance from the highest, not low projections that are projected to us on television and radio and other things. And if I can give you one piece of advice, that is the one piece of advice I'd like to share with you today, right? But it's so important for us to get into that high vibration, right? To be honest with ourselves. And of course, it can take time to develop and nurture. And even people who are highly connected, we can make mistakes sometimes, yep. But it's so important that we keep nurturing it and we take that power back and we don't always rely on other people. Okay, so I'm wishing you all a great day. And as I said, the Lightworkers Toolkit, if anyone wants answer to that, the Lightworkers Toolkit on its own is only £11 a month. And I share lots of modules in there that are worth hundreds of pounds and more. They're probably more because I do not overcharge or I undercharge, and I know I do. For many of my things, it's things that cost me thousands of pounds to learn. They're in the Lightworkers Toolkit. And for a low monthly fee of £11, you can access that, or you get it free with the platinum level of the Spiritual Marketing Club membership. I hope you are all well, and I wish you a great day and a great week.